It's your old pal Tom here on the Tom Gulley Show. Let me tell you about Shindig. That's right, if you liked Hullabaloo, you might wonder, how did Hullabaloo come about? Well, it's mostly because of Shindig. A lot of people think Shindig was the better of the two shows. Both absolutely live shows that had all the big stars on. There were some differences, though, and I'll tell you about them in just a little while. You know, Shindig, like a lot of these shows, was, as I said, live. And Shindig, I'll just tell you right from the outset, is unique in that it actually has all of its episodes that have survived. Most of the other shows have very few episodes, actually, that have survived in an original format or whatever. Shindig has all of its shows that have survived. Does that make you feel good? They survived. Yeah. They're still alive. By the way, I'd like to congratulate the United States Olympic hockey team for defeating Canada in overtime. Gold medal, USA. You want to know something about that? Today is the 46th anniversary of the Miracle on Ice. It kind of brings it home full circle, don't you think? Anniversary, Miracle on Ice. We haven't won a gold medal since then. All right, I'm probably boring you. This, of course, is our cold open. We do this mostly for our audio podcast listeners, because when they get to the show, they don't just want to hear a bunch of music. They'd be confused. They'd say, wait, you're supposed to be telling me about Shindig, and I'm just listening to these songs about this Tom Gulley character. Well, that's just so people can file into our interactive YouTube chat room. That's why we do that, don't you see? And why we're going to do it here in a second. But if you're listening on demand on YouTube, or you're listening on one of the 30 audio podcast platforms that we're on, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Podbean, Podmaster, Podcast Pro, Podcast Weasel. Okay, I made Podcast Weasel up. Well, you just fast forward all the way through to when the show starts here in just about 6 minutes. Meantime, much like on Shindig, you can listen to a few tunes. I can't wait to tell you about the guy that's the host of Shindig. You want to talk about cheesy radio announcers? Not in a bad way. He would probably say, and coming up, let me tell you about Shindig.
Early in the morning, daylight coming through. Coffee on the console, red lights next to blue. Got a voice that settles in, easy, calm and true. The man from Gulley
Gulley's here. G-U-L-L-E-Y. He's here to stay. G-U-L-L-E-Y. The Gulley guarantee. That's what the people need. We're all here to see Tom Gulley. G-U-L-L-E-Y. G-U-L-L-E-Y. Tom Gulley's here. G-U-L-L-E-Y. He's here to stay. G-U-L-L-E-Y. The lights are low, so start the show. Tom's here to go, so let it G-U-L-L-E-Y. G-U-L-L-E-Y. Tom Gulley's here. G-U-L-L-E-Y. He's here to stay. G-U-L-L-E-Y. What? G-U-L-L-E-Y. What we talking about? What? G-U-L-L-E-Y. What we talking about? What we talking about? What we talking about? G-U-L-L-E-Y. Go! He's here to stay. That's what. G-U-L-L-E-Y. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? What's hot? What's hip? What's happening? What is shaking? Let me tell you about Shindig. Shindiggers, groovy guys, groovy gals, cats and kittens. Shindig's pretty cool. It really is. There's a lot of surviving clips. They're all amazing. I'm going to take you through a pantheon of incredible musicians and groups and special guest stars and Jimmy O'Neill. Jimmy O'Neill. I might even play you a little Jimmy O'Neill. I think, and it's a little murky, I think all of the episodes of Shindig are public domain. But the songs aren't. So I think I can play you Jimmy O'Neill. I just can't play you any of the actual performances. Because I'll get dinged for it like bad. Anyway, before we get started, do me a favor. It's a small one. Please like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell, even that like. Oh, those precious, savory likes. We really could use those. They only cost you a click. We do have super chats. We do have memberships. We have gifted memberships. Our goal is always every show on YouTube is any amount of money. And if you go to our YouTube description, you get links to a whole bunch of stuff, including the TomGulleyShow.com. That's where our merchandise store is. That's where you'll get our nostalgic, retro logo on a wide variety of quality name brand items, including a shower curtain. Yeah, there's a shower curtain in there, I'm telling you. I wouldn't lie about something like that. If I'm lying, I'm dying. I'm so tempted to play Jimmy O'Neill. I'll have to do a couple things here, but it probably would be worth it. Just a taste of Jimmy O'Neill. He was the quintessential mid-1960s radio disc jockey. And, hi, Jimmy O'Neill. He's just so, yeah. Anyway, Shindig. Let's talk about it. Shindig, an American musical variety series, airing on ABC from September 16th, 1964 to January 8th, 1966. Now, Shindig actually predated Hullabaloo, and a bunch of other shows similar to Shindig, like Hullabaloo, exploded after the popularity of Shindig. These shows didn't last that long. There's a variety of reasons for that. I'll tell you about them in a second. But they were amazing. The show, of course, was hosted by the photogenic. I'm not going to say he wasn't a good-looking guy in that 60s kind of smiley way. But, cheesy. Jimmy O'Neill was the host, a disc jockey in Los Angeles, and he actually created the show along with his wife, Sharon Sheely, and production executive Art Stolnitz. Now, the original pilot was rejected by ABC, and David Sontag, the executive producer of ABC, redeveloped and completely redesigned the show. A new pilot with a cast of new artists, including the legendary Sam Cooke. You guys remember Sam Cooke, don't you? You Send Me, all that. We ought to do a show about Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke got in a little trouble himself at the end of his existence, but we won't go into that. It was conceived as a short notice replacement for another musical show called Hootenanny, and that series specialized in the folk music revival of Bob Dylan and all of that. Well, the folk music revival totally fizzled out in about 1964 due to the arrival of, that's right, the Beatles. The British invasion happened, and nobody wanted to listen to folk music anymore. All they wanted was the British invasion of pop stars. So that killed off Hootenanny. That show was canceled. So Shindig focused on a broader variety of popular music and first aired for a half an hour every Wednesday, but expanded to an hour in January of 1965. And then in the fall of 1965, the show split into two half-hour telecasts, one on Thursdays and one on Saturday nights. And if you think about it, that's like exactly the opposite of what happened to Hullabaloo. Hullabaloo started off as an hour and then went to a half an hour, and then it too split into two half hours. Shindig started it as a half an hour. It was so popular, they made it an hour. So that's a little duality there. The premiere episode of Shindig was actually the second pilot. Remember, that first pilot didn't work. So that second pilot that they shot, well, yeah, it featured Sam Cooke, big giant star at the time, right? The Everly Brothers, and just because they couldn't get enough brothers, they had to have also the Righteous Brothers. Now, later shows featured performances based in England, and a set was used at Twickenham Film Studios where British acts performed live for the cameras, and then they'd take that footage, fly it back to the United States, and show it on Shindig. The very first UK episode had none other than the Beatles as the guests. And that was the problem of a lot of these other shows that wanted to be Shindig, like Hullabaloo. Hullabaloo never got to have the Beatles on. They would talk about the Beatles. They would mention the Beatles. They would have British accents and say, these guys are just like the Beatles, or a band that opened for the Beatles. They'd say the Beatles whenever they could. That's how popular the Beatles were. But Shindig actually got them. They also got other performers, like The Who, and the Rolling Stones. And so they continued to broadcast episodes with footage shot in London throughout the entire run of the series. This recording of the acts over in England actually meant that many acts were seen on television in the U.S. before they ever came to the United States. The Who, in particular, who performed a very unique early version of My Generation live 2 months before the single was ever recorded. And of course, as I mentioned, Shindig's success prompted NBC to air the very, very similar series Hullabaloo, starting in January of 1965, and it made other producers launch syndicated rock music shows like Chivalry and Hollywood A Go-Go, which are syndicated. I'll also tell you another reason, and believe me, I've watched so many clips from Hullabaloo and Shindig over the last month or so. The shows are very, very, very difficult to tell apart. It's very hard, and there's an extremely good reason for that. The show Shindig also features the only recorded versions, live recorded versions of certain artists playing their hit songs. That's because many artists would go on shows and lip sync their hit record. This was a live show, performed live. So that's why they have some of the only known live recordings of an artist performing their song. And as I told you earlier, Shindig is one of the few rock music shows of that era to still have all episodes available to watch. Now, some of them aren't the greatest quality. They're kinescopes, but at least they have them. At least they have them. Now, if Shindig was so amazing, why in the world, you may ask, did it only last for 2 years? Well, in September of 1965, the show was moved out of its Wednesday night time slot, where it gave Beverly Hillbillies its first serious competition among younger viewers, and it was split into those 2 half-hour shows on Thursday and Saturday. And on Thursdays, they were up against 2 very popular shows, Daniel Boone and, of course, the Munsters. And on Saturday, it was up against Flipper, The Adventures of a Sentient... It couldn't talk, but the people could understand it. You know, Flipper would... What, Flipper? You know. They call him Flipper, Flipper, faster than lightning. Yeah, Flipper. And it was also up against the Jackie Gleason show, which was super popular. But another big reason, and I think this is the biggest reason, is that the Saturday edition of the Thursday and Saturday split aired in a time period when many of the people who would be interested in watching Shindig were going out on dates and hanging out at the malt shop and driving their cars fast up and down the road. So they weren't at home to watch television. By October of 1965, a couple of months later, the show was having ratings problems. And in January of 1966, Shindig was canceled, and it was replaced in its Thursday time slots by a little TV show called Batman, which also later split to 2 nights of the week. Here's the deal. One of the reasons, I think this is the biggest reason that Shindig and Hullabaloo are almost impossible to tell apart when you watch the old clips. If you remember, the choreographer for Hullabaloo was a guy named David Winters, who in his publicity picture looks like he just graduated from a mortician school, but on camera, because he would dance on the shows and stuff, he would choreograph the backup dancers on both of the shows that accompanied the music acts of the week. He worked on both of the shows. Okay, now these backup dancers, some of them became very famous. CIA says, good afternoon, Tom. Chef says, Chef is on the couch. Good to see both of you. Arsenal 4, The Scum 1. Little soccer score there for CIA. Among these famous backup singers was Terry Garr. Oh, yes, who later went on to find success, big success as an actress. Also a dancer by the name of Lorene Yarnell, who later became part of Shields and Yarnell, who had a gigantically successful variety show in the 70s. The assistant choreographer for this particular show was a gal by the name of Antonia Basilata. Although you may know her better as Toni Basil, who had the smash 80s hit, Oh, Mickey, you're so fine, you blow my mind. Hey, Mickey. You know, Mickey, the big song Mickey, that infectious song you can't get out of your head. Another thing about the show was its house band. Now, the series house band was supposedly known as the Shindiggers, but that was actually the name host Jimmy O'Neill used to refer to fans of the show. He would even say, you know, great news, Shindiggers. You know, it's just cheesy. At first, the backup group was referred to as the Shindig Band, but for some reason, by early 1965, they'd been renamed Sir Rufus Marion Banks and his Band of Men. But the generic name came back pretty quickly. I'm not going to get into all of the members of this backup group, but I will tell you that they had a guy that took over on keyboards and a singer on the show, and his name was Billy Preston. That's right, the Billy Preston that became the pianist for, and I said pianist, for the Beatles, and also had that big, will it go round in circles? I got a song, it ain't got no melody. That guy. Glenn Campbell, that's right, I said Glenn Campbell was not only a regular member of the house band, but also a frequent performer. Now, this house band and all their members, whose names I would recognize, but you guys probably won't, so I won't mention them, they did form the most legendary studio musicians in popular music recording. In the 60s and 70s, when studio musicians were needed to back up an artist, they called a group called the Wrecking Crew. There's a great 2008 documentary about them. I would do a show about them, but you can't play any of the music, so, you know. But the Wrecking Crew is, to this day, absolutely legendary for songs you've listened to your whole life, and famous solos in songs, and bass lines, and drum. I can't even begin to communicate to you how famous the Wrecking Crew is in the recording industry. Now, the series did have, like, standard regular vocalists that would come on and sing. They weren't, I don't know that they were on enough that you could call them regulars, but they were on so frequently, nobody would look askance at you if you did call them regulars. And I just whistle talked there for a second. I apologize. And some of those were the Righteous Brothers, who I showed earlier, a little pop group called Dick and Dee, Donna Lauren, Bobby Sherman. There was an all-female vocal group that would back people up with, the usual Motown kind of sound. And they were the Blossoms. And they're significant because one of the Blossoms was Darlene Love, who later became a big solo artist. You might know Darlene Love because she was a regular Christmas performer for David Letterman for about, 30 years. She would always play at Christmas time. And she would play her legendary hit, Christmas Baby, Please Come Home, which is awesome. And if you've never heard it, well, you're missing out in a big way. And I feel bad for you. I do. Now let's just go through some of the musical guests on Shindig that I haven't told you about. I mean, I've already told you about The Who and the Rolling Stones and a lot of people. Here's some of them that I haven't told you about. And by the way, please like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell. Please. I'll be your friend. I'll eat lunch with you when no one else will. I'll save your spot. Leslie Gore. Yes, it's her party. You can cry if you want to. The legendary Bo Diddley, who's famous for dunk, 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 dunk. Mostly that's what he's famous for. Sonny and Cher, of course. The Beach Boys. James Brown, whom, as I'm sure you know, is the hardest working man in show business. Jackie Wilson. The Supremes, yes, nothing but heartache. The Ronettes, featuring Ronnie Spector, the wife of Phil Spector, who in this photo apparently wasn't severely beaten by that psychopath that day. Little Eva. Now let me mention something about Little Eva. Little Eva is famous for a song that you've heard and that you know, and you may not have shaken your groove thing and or your booty to it, but you know it. It's called The Locomotion. It was a giant, giant hit. And incidentally, I'm going to point out, this was during the age of the dance craze. There were certain dances many times attached to a smash hit song that people would do because people had these things called dances. Yes, and they would get together and have punch and socialize at these dances, as opposed to today where dancing has been relegated to going into a dimly lit building with flashing lights and strobes and music that is boots and pants and boots and pants and boots and pants and EDM. Anyway, the reason I bring up The Locomotion and Little Eva is that, like I mentioned before, the only known live recording of Little Eva doing The Locomotion live is from the TV series Shindig. The Mamas and the Papas were on board. Oh, yes, they were. Not even joking about that. Eric Burden and the Animals. There's a house in New Orleans. They call around. Those people. They were on. CIA says I might get canceled calling Spurs scum. I bet that sandwich would have tasted better today if you just followed the process of checking the kickoff time and date. I made a pizza. It was equally delicious, and frankly, I could have eaten a soggy old shoe if Arsenal is winning 4-1 and Eze and Gyökeres are both scoring 2 goals. That everything tastes good when that happens. It really does. I hate Tottenham more than I love Arsenal, I think, sometimes. Shirley Bassey was on the show, and I think to American audiences, she's not as well known as probably she should be, but she is well known because when I tell you that she sang Goldfinger, he's a man with a Midas touch, a spider's touch. She sang the theme song, the opening theme song, for I think 7 James Bond movies, and she's Welsh. So Shirley Bassey, pretty awesome. Of course, I mentioned the Beatles, but you can't mention the Beatles and not. Look, when these shows were on, if Jimmy O'Neill mentioned the Beatles, if one of the guest hosts of Hullabaloo mentioned the Beatles, or if they just said those 4 mop tops from Liverpool, the crowd would go insane, screeching and screaming in the background. I kid you not. The Beau Brummels. Oh, yes, the Beau Brummels were on the show. The Beau Brummels were also on a famous appearance of Shindig on another show that I will tell you about, Tony Bennett. Now, I'll also point out that Shindig, I would say, had, because they were on the air longer and because they, I think, tended to want a wider variety of artists. Look, to get on Hullabaloo, you pretty much had to have a hit song right then, right that day, or have had enough hits in the past that, you know, you were legit. That wasn't so much the case with Shindig. They just wanted to have a party on Shindig. So they would have Booker T and the MGs, which still is one of the best band names ever. And then they would have Johnny Cash. Yeah, so a little wider range of acts than on Hullabaloo. Chubby Checker, as you know, famous for The Twist and the Peppermint Twist, I think. The Dave Clark Five, who they did a song that another soccer team plays in England, I think, and it's sad. Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul. Jerry and the Pacemakers, another British act. Stan Getz. Now, see, this shows you how much of a variety that they would have on Shindig. He was a famous jazz artist. You can see he's got his saxophone right there. Dizzy Gillespie, another jazz legend. They didn't mind stopping down and having a jazz artist. They had Davy Jones, yes, solo by himself without the rest of the Monkees. They had the Kingsmen on, and the Kingsmen were kind of a get. Nobody even knew what the Kingsmen looked like. They were thought to not be white. When you listen to the record, you know their record, don't you? The Kingsmen. Louie, Louie, whoa, baby, we gotta go. Ay, 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 ay. Yeah, the Kingsmen. There you go. They also had the Kinks. Lola, Lola, Lola. They had Jerry Lee Lewis, the Killer. By the way, at the time, kind of controversial to have Jerry Lee Lewis on. I think we all know what happened to Jerry Lee Lewis at the height of his career. He married somebody, and it was not popular. Was not popular. Little Anthony and the Imperials. And he doesn't look that little to me, but this is the name of the group. Also the legendary Little Richard. The electrifying Little Richard. George Maharis, who not only was the star of the very popular television show Route 66, he was also a singer, like a legitimate singer. That's how he got the Route 66 gig and then became an actor. Manfred Mann, and this was before it was Manfred Mann and his Earth band that butchered the Bruce Springsteen song Blinded by the Light for a giant hit over here in the United States. Martha and the Vandellas. Yes. By the way, this is the only known sighting of a Vandella. There's never been another. You've never, ever seen a Vandella in any other usage or... Yeah, I've never been at the store and said, pick me up a couple Vandellas, or, had a problem with my car and the mechanic said, oh, well, here the problem is your Vandella. No, these are the only known. Johnny Mathis. Chances are, if I wear a funny grin, the moment you come into view. Oh, yeah, Randy, the chef, he likes pizza. We all love pizza. If you ever meet anybody that doesn't like pizza, run away. They're a serial killer. Wow, that is good Monster energy drink. The Moody Blues. And they do look moody to me. Ricky Nelson, who by this time was going by the name Rick Nelson, and was from the TV show. His parents were, in fact, Ozzie and Harriet. But then he became a singer. Look, I love Rick Nelson, whatever he wants to be called. He's no longer with us. I think it was plane crash or something. But he was in the movie Rio Bravo. He was not a great actor, even on Ozzie and Harriet. He just was just deadpan almost, his voice. And his singing was the same way. It was whisper talk singing. It was, I think his biggest hit was a song called Garden Party. He had some hits when he was a teenager that were just sort of typical. But then the song Garden Party, I went to a garden party. That's barely singing, if you ask me, but Gene Pitney, who's got one of my favorite songs, Town Without Pity. When you're down and you're all alone. I love that song. It's pretty good. Johnny Rivers, Memphis Information. Give me Memphis, Tennessee. Johnny Rivers has a lot of hits, actually. The Miracles, before they were Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. Okay, Bobby Rydell. Look at that hair. For those of you listening on an audio podcast form, this pompadour he's got to be 2 feet thick. There's a song from Shindig. If you look it up, it's called The Joker, or The Joker Is Me. It varies what they call it. By Bobby Rydell. Incidentally, the high school in Greece is Rydell High School, and it's named after Bobby Rydell. He's a very, very popular artist of the time. If you've ever seen the movie Green Book, that movie opens up with Bobby Rydell performing at the Copacabana. Well, this version of The Joker, if you go to YouTube and you look it up, scroll and scroll until you get the color version. There's a really, really good color version of it. It leads me to believe that Bobby Rydell didn't have that great of a voice in terms of range, right? When he sings the Joker, he shakes the upper half of his body to make the notes. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And I don't mean gyrate or vibrate. I mean kind of back and forth, you know. The song, it opens with, "The Joker is me." When he's going, his body's going back and forth. There's always a joker in the pack. I love the way he performs. Don't get me wrong. It sounds like I don't, but I do. I really do. Neil Sedaka, famous for Calendar Girl and many other hits. Del Shannon was on the show. The Shangri-Las. Oh, boy. The Shangri-Las, yes. Spencer Davis Group, that's where Steve Winwood would later come from. The Temptations, who doesn't like the Temptations? And then this next guy, who is one of my favorites of all time, Joe Tex. Now, Joe Tex was like a poor man's James Brown or Ray Charles. In fact, one of his songs is called You're Right, Ray Charles. Yeah, you're right. I got 'em dancing day and night. Yeah, you're right, Brother Ray. Yeah, you're right. I mean, he is so good. He's got a song called Buying a Book. He's got at least one song on one of the Quentin Tarantino movie soundtracks. Joe Tex, look him up. And in the day, you used to be able to find Joe Tex compilations in all the like discount record areas. He's so good. Bobby V, take good care of my baby. Mary Wells, the Yardbirds, also British, I believe. Now, this program also had guest hosts. All right, they would have Jimmy O'Neill. I think I am going to play some Jimmy O'Neill in just a little while. This show would have celebrity guests, let's call them, and many times they were themed. If the show had a theme, which would usually just be a holiday. One of them was Lurch. That's right. Ted Cassidy was a celebrity guest. Patty Duke, who had her own very, very popular show where she played two identical cousins on her own show. The Patty Duke Show had two cousins. One was crazy and wild, and the other one was very serious and studious. And they would always get into these, what we'd like to call wacky hijinks by pretending to be each other, which never worked out because, one of them likes the minuet, the crepe Suzette. The other likes the rock and roll. A hot dog makes her lose control because they're cousins, identical cousins. It's from the theme song. Another celebrity guest was the legendary Los Angeles Rams lineman, defensive lineman, Rosie Greer, who you see here with Don Rickles. Rosie Greer, like a lot of Los Angeles athletes at the time, was in a lot of TV shows and movies and stuff like that. Rosie Greer also was next to Robert F. Kennedy when he was, you can hear in the audio tape, they don't have any video of it, but when Robert F. Kennedy is shot, you can hear the person on the microphone, the reporter, yelling, "Rosie, get the gun, get the gun." Yeah, Rosie Greer was right there. Right there. Tommy Kirk, who was a Disney star, was another celebrity guest. Douglas Fairbanks Jr., who you guys probably don't remember, but was a gigantic movie star at one time. He wasn't at this time, but he was at the time. Vincent Price was a celebrity guest. Oh, yes. Raquel Welch, was a celebrity guest, as was Orson Welles. He's way younger in this picture than he was on that show. And I should mention that I'm going to just put Raquel Welch back up here just for cosmetic reasons. Many of these people that are older that you would think, why are they on Shindig? They're like 20 years older than this show. And you might think that they were doing it to appeal to an older audience. Not really. That's not the reason the show had them on. The show had them on for two reasons. Number one, they were really popular with people, and maybe it would appeal to an older audience. It was mostly because these people were from old Hollywood. And if anything, the people in old Hollywood recognized the necessity to stay relevant to the audience. So these older acts were kind of willing. I mean, you saw it in the Smothers Brothers show where Jack Benny would go on with George Burns or something like that. They wanted to continue to appeal to the public at large. So they felt that going on a hip, younger show like Shindig would make them seem like, hey, that old guy, he digs what we're up to, man. He's a pretty cool cat. And that's why they did it. That's why they did it. Now, maybe they owed the network a favor. Maybe they wanted to be on another show and the network said, hey, if you go on to Shindig, we'll let you do Doctari or something. I don't know. I'm probably the only one here that remembers the TV show Doctari. Anyway, Zsa Zsa Gabor was a guest host, which is different than a celebrity guest. Boris Karloff. Now, obviously, it was a Halloween episode. If you don't know, Boris Karloff played Frankenstein, the original Frankenstein. Edie Lamar, who was one of the most gigantically popular movie stars of a bygone era. Hugh O'Brien, who had a TV show called The Adventures of Wyatt Earp that was quite popular. And he did television after that. Also started a scholarship called the I Dare You Awards, which a kid at our school won when I was in high school. It was a thing. It was a thing. In 1991 and 1992, Rhino Entertainment released a series of Shindig Presents VHS videos featuring highlights from the series. There are also people on eBay that will sell you recordings that aren't found elsewhere of Shindig. Now, Shindig actually appeared on another television show. Yes. Oh, yes. That show was called The Flintstones. That's right. Shindig appeared on The Flintstones. By the way, like, share, subscribe. Boy, we need those likes. We need those shares. And by the way, I'd like to say thank you to Lucas Malago and Biggie and my good friend Ed Robertson and all those people that like and share my tweets about the show. Very helpful. It's very, very helpful and also very classy. Anyway, what you might not know, and I might just go ahead and tell you, is that Shindig made an appearance in December of 1965 on the Flintstones. Now, you might not know, and this is the part you might not know, the Flintstones started off as a primetime television show. Yeah, okay, maybe they'd show it on Saturday morning with the cartoons, but it was a situation comedy that aired in prime time on the network. Yes. Those episodes of the Flintstones that you watch from back in the day, not the shorter ones they made later on, but the original ones, those were for prime time. And that's why they sound like a situation comedy. They're kind of like the Honeymooners, right? Well, on one episode, they had a show and they converted everything Flintstone style. You know, instead of Tony Curtis, it was Stony Curtis, right? And they made everything Stone Age. The Flintstones had a TV show called Shin Rock with host Jimmy O'Neill Stone. And by the way, Jimmy O'Neill provided his very own voice on that. The episode actually featured musical guest the Beau Brummels, appearing, of course, as the Beau Brummel Stones, who performed their hit song, Laugh, Laugh, and Make Me Cry, Laugh, Laugh. And at one point, Fred turns the show off, saying, let me take care of that Jimmy O'Neill Stone, Whereupon O'Neill Stone's hand reaches out from the TV set and turns it back on. And Barney says, "Well, that's one way to keep up their ratings." Well, so Shindig actually appeared on another show. And the Shindogs were a rock parody group on an episode of the Patty Duke Show. When Patty sang Funny Little Butterflies, you know, it's staggering the number of TV stars that had actual hit records that nobody's ever heard, you know, that you've never been heard of again back in the 60s. It was just like, hey, you're on a TV show, we're going to have you do some songs. And because your TV show's popular, one of them will probably be a hit. Who knows? Chef said we were just talking about Jerry Lee Lewis the other day at work. Oh, yeah, killer. The killer. The killer. I went and saw him once. He played piano with like two of his hands and his foot, and it was insane. That was really crazy, let me tell you. Let me see if I can get some Jimmy O'Neill for you real quick here. Let's see. I got to bring it up. It's going to take a second, but I think it would be helpful to hear Jimmy O'Neill. And I want to listen to Jimmy O'Neill just for my own morbid curiosity. Let's see here. Shindig. I had a clip of him that I searched around for about a half an hour this morning and couldn't find. Where was the one I'm looking for? Come on. Is this it? No, I don't think it is. Oh, now I'm talking to myself on this show again. Now I'm talking to myself. Come on, Jimmy O'Neill. Make yourself evident to me. Jimmy O'Neill, would you please? I should have bookmarked him. Would have made it a lot easier. See, now it's a thing. Now I have to find Jimmy O'Neill for you. It's got to happen now. It's just got to happen now. Does he introduce Petula Clark here? Doggone it. Where was the one that maybe this is the one. Nope, that's certainly not it. I'm pretty sure this one will do. Let me just check for you real quick here. I hate pre-roll ads. Do you guys do this? Do you do the thing where, like I do, if there's a pre-roll ad and you really want to hear something, you hate that advertiser for the rest of your life? Let me see if this will give me some Jimmy O'Neill here. Oh, I think this is Jimmy O'Neill talking to somebody. Hold on, let me set up my audio so you can actually hear this. All right. Here's Jimmy O'Neill talking to some musician. Yeah, they had a lot of really crappy comedy sketches on Shindig. All right, this is going to be a better Jimmy O'Neill. And I'll put this in stereo so you guys can actually hear it. I know that volume was a little low. I'll correct that right now. Here's a little of the magic of Jimmy O'Neill.
All right. By the way, I understand that Elvis is one of our regular viewers here on Shindig. I certainly do hope he's watching tonight for obvious reasons. Also because we have a very special surprise for him. I'd like to read you a telegram which I think really sums up the feeling of everyone in the entertainment industry. I think you'll enjoy hearing it. It's to Elvis Presley, care of Shindig, ABC TV, Hollywood, California. And it reads, "Sincere congratulations on your really great achievement. Hope we will be somewhere in 10 years' time." And it's signed, a band, the Beatles.
Okay, so then there's a little Jimmy O'Neill. Let's see if I find a little more Jimmy O'Neill. He's a little bit in a silent band called the Beatles, and you heard the crowd go absolutely ape guano. Here he is interviewing. I don't know who it is. This looks like an interaction with a young band person.
Any further tonight on tonight's show, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take this opportunity to wish Mr. Bobby Sherman a very happy 20th birthday.
Thank you, Jimmy, very much. And everybody with the show. Dean, Ted, everybody, Mark, everyone. I couldn't. Oh, here we go. I want to say real fast. It's Sal's birthday. Right. Our cameraman, Sal Felino. Jackie was yesterday. Ray Pullman, our musical director. Everyone's birthday is today.
Carol Shalene, our dancer with the glasses. It's birthday night all over. Hey, I hope you'll join us next week, ladies and gentlemen. Remember that every show all summer long is with no reruns, brand new one you've never, ever before seen. We'll be welcoming back Shindig regulars Donna Lauren, Glenn Campbell, Billy Preston, the Blossoms of Wellington, the Shin Dogs, and special guest Bobby Goldsboro, Joey Page, the Ronettes, the Impression, Sonny and Cher, Donovan, and special guest stars the Rolling Stones will be with us next week. Thanks so much. You've been a great audience, ladies and gentlemen. I hope we'll see you next week. Until then, Jimmy O'Neill saying good night, Shindiggers everywhere. And remember, no matter what anyone says, rock on!
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little Jimmy O'Neill for you. I could find more, but it wouldn't be that much different. And you can hear how excited the crowd is at all times on Shindig. They can't believe they're alive. They can't believe they're on Earth. And they just mention the Beatles, and it's just, they're coming out of their skin. They're losing their minds. They're losing their absolute minds on Shindig, I tell you. They just can't seem to get enough. Where's my audio thing? I better turn this off, because if I don't, I'll accidentally play something, and then we'll have problems. Let me see here. Randy says Cooper at work really likes the missing person episodes. He was wondering if you're going to do any from missing persons in other countries. You know, I can. I'll do anything, man. I'll do anything. If he has a missing person from another country he'd like me to talk about, I'll do it this week. I haven't even booked this week yet, or next week, or one of the weeks. Thursday is, well, what we like to call Missing Person Day here at the Tom Gulley Show. It's just horrible that I even have that. However, you know, that's really all I have to tell you about Shindig. It really is. And the other thing is, my very, very close personal friend, the Reverend Bob Levy, has got a show that's starting right about now. And not only do I not like God, that hair is just, I'm sorry, I just woke up from a nap. The hockey game was on early in the morning. Then I had Arsenal. I fell asleep. And my hair's messed up. But my very, very, very close personal friend, Bob Levy, his show is starting right now. And I don't like to be on when he's on. And then I also like to watch that show. So I'm looking at that old clock on the wall, and it says, I got an Amscray. I really do. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Tomorrow, the Farmington mine disaster, and then Tuesday, speaking of missing people, Amelia Earhart, and although she's not from another country, she disappeared outside the United States. I hope that's good enough. I hope to God that's good enough. And with all that being said, Shindiggers, I've got a smash hit created by Leon Kennedy, our musical director. And people are clamoring for it all across the country. It's in all the record stores. It's called Gully. It's an R&B whirlwind. You're going to really enjoy it. Until next time, we'll see you next time. Me and Jimmy O'Neill.
lights are low, so start the show. Time's here to go, so let's